Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Mad Mamluks. I'm Mahin and I'm here with my co-hosts, Shaykh Amir Saeed and Sim. And today, live in studio, we welcome a very special guest, Shaykh Amin Kholwadia, who is the founder and president of Dar al-Qasim, which is an Islamic institution of higher learning in the Chicagoland area, but also has chapters across the United States. So Shaykh Amin, first of all, thank you very much, Jazakallah khair, for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Jazakallah. It's an honor, pleasure to be here.
It is truly a treat, and for me especially, and I'll tell you why. In this whole DuPage County where we grew up, Shaykh Amin was definitely a teacher. Everybody somehow relates to him as being his teacher, whether through Ramadan of leading. There was a time, I think, where you were actually leading prayers at IFS and giving the talks and taking care of all of that. So everyone has directly or indirectly had touch with Shaykh Amin, whether it's learning or getting advice. And but for me, this is a major treat, is because I still remember in the year 2000, I was trying to learn Arabic with him, and I didn't do very well because of that situation I was in at that time and the busyness that I was at. But there was one time where I went to his house and I said, I have to have a conversation with you. Tell me if you remember this. And there was another brother there that was helping you, I think, painting the house or something like that. And you took the time out, and you didn't have to. And he sat with me, and he said, okay, you want to go and study? Let's see if these feelings that you have are actually, if they're real, if you really are ready to do so, right? And when he said that to me, I think, okay, no one else did that to me, because everyone's like, go, 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 And he actually took the time to be like, okay, let's see if you're ready to do so, because we don't want this to end, in a negative way. That's kind of what I got from it. So he talked with me. He had a conversation with me. His house was being renovated at the time, and he's taken out the time to talk to me and this and that. So that was something really awesome. And at the end, he was like, you know what? I think you should go ahead with it, and make sure that you're very careful. And one golden piece of advice that he told me was, he said, you're going to be gone for at least a few years, because at that time I was planning on being Mauritania for 4 years, but I was there for a year and a half. And he said to me, when you come back, make sure you don't open your mouth for 6 months, because a lot's going to change. Even if you see something that you think is wrong, don't say anything, right? And that's exactly what it was. And he's the one who actually pushed me in that way, and that's why I firmly believe I'm forever indebted to this individual. So it's a major treat to have him. I'm sorry it took so long, but alhamdulillah, we have the place, so it's very comfortable, and it's actually a presentable studio. We didn't want to bring you to a studio, someone who has your reputation community, some place where it would be inconvenient or anything like that. So it's very your presence has a grandeur to it too, inshallah.
Yes. No, it's a pleasure. It's all mine to be here with you guys, mashallah, young, energetic, and the reason I told you to shut up for 6 months is most probably you didn't know anything.
Yeah. You're right. I honestly still don't.
Good, Marsh. No, it's just we have to be careful when we learn something fresh. Okay, then we need to process it, and it's the re-acclimatization is a process, and you need time to do that.
Of course.
Yeah, so that was the reason why I said don't engage in meaningful conversations.
No, I completely understood that after I got back too, because it gets tempting. Yes. You want to say something, you learn something, and you think that you can now but there's no wisdom behind it then. No. It's only emotion, which can be very destructive.
Yes. Good. You made it good.
It's all alhamdulillah from your du'as and your advice, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah. Shaykh Amin, so you mentioned before while we were setting up that you're Gujarati in ethnicity. Yes. How many years did you live in India before you were in the UK?
Yeah, I was in India for about 3 years. Then I moved with my mother and 2 sisters to England, where my father already was there.
Okay.
And then we lived there. I lived there until I was in high school. After high school, I went back to India to study. I did my hifz in Gujarat, studied in Bangalore, Sabil, al-Rashad. I studied 1 year in Karachi. The rest of the studies was in Deobandi, UP, India. Mm-hmm. And I spent some good time with the judge of India, Qadi Mujahid Islam in Bihar, Patna, Pulwari Sharif. So that's the extent of my travels.
So this is. I'm sorry, I didn't know this, but I didn't know that you spent time with the judge, because when many people ask me, studying with Shaykh Amin, what should I study with him? And one element, I actually mentioned this to you guys too, one of the highest levels, or the highest level of exercising fiqh, is being a judge.
Yes,
it's different than being a mufti, because a mufti, it's not fard to completely follow everything, but if a judge decides something, there's a lot of implications. Someone's life can be on the line.
That's right.
And one thing we realize about how you conduct yourself is you conduct yourself in a very judge-like fashion, which I don't see in many individuals. And I'm not going to make this a session of completely just all praising you, but it's something that we should recognize, because something that's always intrigued me, that I always wanted to ask on this podcast, is there's many people who've studied where maybe you've studied, right? Deoband, and but you're not like the average, and I don't mean this negative about anybody else, but you're not exactly like them. You don't teach your methods, your mindset is not like theirs. Rather, there's a different element. And that's what I don't know about you guys. I want to know that's what makes you tick in that way, that you have a different approach, of teaching.
Basically, Allah has been very kind to me. And, I've always wanted to think in a very organized way, structured way. My early schooling in England helped me develop, an attitude in life that was organized, structured, especially in the thinking. When I went to India, I was very fortunate that I met my Shaykh, Wallah yarhamu, Shaykh Mohammed Meeran, and he was also exceptionally organized in the way he understood life and reality and everything else. And wherever I went, in Sabil al-Rashad, the first madrasa I really went to, post-Hifz, the founder was a judge also.
Allahu Akbar.
And the last school I went to was also a judge. So I think in sandwich in between two judges, you see what you see in front of you.
And I even told this to my students. I taught your son also. And that was actually, I was saying this before the podcast. At first it was kind of intimidating. Don't worry, babe, I was intimidated by you as your father. But it was like, how am I going to teach his son Islamic studies? But I don't know if you remember me saying this. I said that if there's anyone that can be a judge that I know in the United States, it would be Shaykh Amin, right? An Islamic judge.
Yes.
Right? And that it's kind of understood even the way you conduct your talks.
Judgeship is necessary to understand the Islamic law. That we value Islamic law, and it's slightly different from fiqh. Fiqh doesn't become law until a judge gives a verdict and until the government approves of that law being enacted. So that's where my curiosity has always been. That in my early days when I was in school, I came across some encyclopedias where they, for some odd reason, praised Islam and the Muslim civilization. I find it very odd in Western Europe. That nowadays is very different. But I was intrigued by the level of organization, legal organization that the Muslims offered. And indeed, when I started studying Hidayah, the book of Hanafi law, I saw it was just amazingly structured, organized. And so, but having said that, we don't crave to be a judge because, it's a very sensitive issue and matter, and we want to make sure that justice is served. And that's difficult to do if you're always listening to the sad stories of the community day in, day out. And you have to get real with life and practical about life also. So rather than take the route of being, a judge, black and white, counseling also helps.
It does. Yeah, it does. Sure. And one thing I remember, and you guys can chime in. I'm just going to keep going back and forth one thing I realized in the book of Al-Hidayah that you mentioned, the section of Adab al-Qadi, right, of how a Qadi conducts himself. And when I went through that portion, I realized how detailed every move of a judge is, because the expectations are so high of the judge. Yes. He's expected to almost be superhuman. Yes. Right? Yes. And even one of the chapters that intrigued me is that if a judge is listening to two parties, if he turns and he looks at somebody else, he should look at the other person too, to be fair. And even Imam Hanifa and Imam Muhammad was also mentioning that if they one shouldn't be farther than the other. Like you and me are sitting right here, you're closer to me than him. They should be at a fair distance also. Like such detail. Equality.
Under the law. Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are our principles that came through Wahi, which, although we came to distribute to everybody in the world, but I think those who took from us should give us credit also.
Of course.
Now, after you finished your studies in India, did you return to England?
Yes, I came back to England. I worked as a translator for about 2 years. Then I came over here, and the rest is history.
Right now, you came directly to Chicago, or did you?
No. I came to the West Coast, the prettiest part of the US of A. I quickly realized it wasn't for me.
Why? Too expensive?
Reasons. Too expensive and too wild. I wasn't that wild.
Okay.
MashaAllah.
No, it was like south. It was like the Bay Area.
The Bay Area, yeah. And
I see.
it was a complete desert. Meaning there were very, very few Muslims, and the Jummah I did attend was very poorly conducted, and some people said, the only place you might be comfortable is Chicago. I said, well,
Somebody really said that to you?
yeah. So I said, oh, fine. So Chicago was not on my itinerary exactly, and somehow Allah brought me here, and then as you can see. Alhamdulillah, it's been okay.
What years are we talking about? Like in
It was about 1984.
84. Okay.
Yeah, 84.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, so this is like This is like
Before you were born.
I was born in 81 actually.
You were?
I was born. Yeah.
I was born
Oh,
81
well, you
also.
don't look like that. Which is good for
I try to dress like a 19-year-old. It annoys my wife, so I keep it up.
you. Well, I
You
didn't
know
know.
what I remember when Shaykh Amin came to Chicago, all the young kids in the area were really happy seeing someone who was a little bit younger.
Yeah.
And, and they were like, "Oh, have you heard of Hafiz Amin? That was your moniker back then." And everyone wanted to go and sit with you because you were able to relate
Yeah.
to
But
them.
not only that, they love the accent too, because we've never seen
totally.
any scholar that came. They actually had, with all due respect,
Yes,
we don't
yes.
mean, but they had a Desi accent or Arab accent.
yeah.
But then you have this individual, mashallah, he goes, and then you had guys, and not in any ill manner, they started trying to imitate him because they liked the accent. I don't know if you were aware of that,
Yeah.
but a lot of people love the accent.
Yeah. I was told later on that many people tried to mimic me. And, I don't have any recordings of those. But,
Confess your sins, everyone out there.
Now, one thing that I remember over the summer, we had a chance to we had a chance to kind of be flies on the wall with a breakfast between you and Sheikh Yasser Qadi.
yes.
And I remember you telling him that, he needs and I would assume this advice is for any American da'i.
Yeah.
Is to spend a week in Chicago.
Yes.
Not give any talks, just hang out.
Yes. No,
You know,
definitely.
why would you recommend Chicago? It sounded like you think Chicago is a microcosm
Yeah.
of what's going on in the United States, but could you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, Chicago is a microcosm of what happens in the Muslim Ummah, period. Okay, not just the Muslims of America, because anything you want and is here in Chicago available to you. You have Bhangra, dances and music, and you have, mushawara, poetry competitions, and you have all the great food, and you have even, cricket leagues, and you have other Arabs doing their business, and you have people who claim they're doing Islamic work, but they're not, and you have people who...
Is that us?
Are you here to reprimand us, Sheikh? Is that why you came on the show?
And you have these pseudo-intellectuals and pseudo-actors and, wannabe pop stars and all the great stuff that the Muslim Ummah does outside of America, you find in Chicago.
And I think that's why the selection, if I can move into this, is why you chose this institute
Yes.
to be in Chicago.
Exactly, yeah.
Because it's a representative of...
It's a very versatile, vibrant community. Things do get done in Chicago by hook or crook eventually, although some of the time we use to plan may be better served. But there's a huge market. In Chicago, you have so many Muslim organizations, so many Muslim institutions of higher learning, as you were saying, but they all have their own specific market.
Yeah.
The pies are just so big.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think people who want to do work in the USA should have a field trip to Chicago once before they start their work. Yeah.
And one thing I realized is one of the teaching vehicles that you have, or the driving force, was filled with a lot of wisdom, but not just average wisdom. It was a Ghazali type wisdom. A lot of the talks that I've attended of yours, you refer to Imam al-Ghazali and you uncover a lot of these things, not only just in purification of the soul aspect or tazkiyat an-nafs or tasawwuf. It's a very juristic method.
Yes.
And would you say that that's kind of like the driving force, or you utilize, or how do you utilize a lot of that philosophy of yours?
Again, it goes back to the philosophy of organization and structure, that everything God creates has to come through an organization and a structure, like the word wahi, okay, and the word amr. Amr means order and command, but there has to be a structure in it. So Imam Ghazali, because he was, the tail end of the early scholars, not quite the mutaqaddimun, the early predecessors, but he was there at a time when they had already fathomed the depth of the law. And because of that, he represents both the spiritual component and also the legal component. But the reason I would speak about Ghazali and speak through Ghazali would be because of the spiritual component, to bring people down to earth, literally, so that you say that this is Allah's favor on you, that you're actually thinking about Islam in this country, the superpower of the world, and you have the ability to worship freely, which I think we still do.
Yeah.
That hasn't been rescinded, has it? As of today?
As of today, no.
Good. Allah keep it that way.
I mean.
Yeah, inshallah. But it was that was what I call the Islahi paradigm, the Islahi approach to reforming the Muslim Ummah. Then Dar al-Qasim is about the academic paradigms, and the academic paradigm has to be on par with the community and culture of mainstream America. Mm-hmm. So in mainstream America, what do you call a good education? Okay. You don't call high school a good education. That's a necessary, like almost fard ayn level of education, right? Mm-hmm. A good education is at least you have a bachelor's. Even these athletes who, are entertainers, they claim they went to college. And they claim they have a degree. Now, whether they did anything with their education, that's a different issue. But at least they were saying that they had a bachelor's. Mm-hmm. So Dar al-Qasim was under this rubric that we wanted to cater for students who wanted to learn Islam at the bachelor's level, at the master's level, and eventually, inshallah, at the PhD level. So that's the organization structure I came up with, so that it's kind of consumer friendly, and we use the market language, and it's not alien to a young person who's born and raised here. What is this alim degree? It's an alim degree is the master's level of Islamic studies. So our job is done. The marketing is easier. If you say an alim degree is 7 years of study where you study this, it won't make any sense to someone. That's too abstract. So we broke it down at Dar al-Qasim. So we also have a pre-collegiate program, which is our best product. That's the Shaykh al-Hind program, where the idea there is to assist the Muslim learning Islam through the fard ayn method, but in Arabic. Okay? So he gains some confidence and says, guess what? I know that salat is fard, and I can say as-salatu fardun in Arabic, and and I can get away with it too. Yeah. So that's a part-time product for 2 years, where we request people to spend 9 hours a week over 4 semesters. By the end of that, we develop within the student, hopefully, the ability to read books like Qasas al-Nabiyyin, Book 1, Book 2, and also be able to follow the text of Aqidah al-Hawiyah. That's our Shaykh al-Hind program. That is necessary to enroll in the bachelor's. Then the bachelor's 4 years. At the end of the bachelor's, we teach enough so that the students are able to read Islamic law, like Hidayah, if you're Hanafi. All right, and Jalalain in Tafsir, which is a good standard of understanding the Quran, and Sharia Qaid in your theology, and also in your Arabic, you have certain standards. And Hadith, we use Mishkat. After that, the master's level is your Siha Sittah courses, spread out over 2 years with some other books that you need for further education. Just
for our listeners, Siha Sittah, he means the 6 books of hadith that the Muslims depend upon, including
Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, etc. That you're able to read that in your master's level of education. But we just reframed it
So the master's is hadith based, basically.
The master's is hadith based, so that you can understand your fiqh better.
Very nice.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And you have, I heard that you're coming out with a PhD level now too.
We are, en route
in the
to
works.
making a PhD level program also.
SubhanAllah.
We just need more geeks to come on board.
I'm the first to enroll. If you have it, I'm there. Inshallah.
Wait, you don't qualify as a geek.
I don't qualify as a geek. I'm a loser, but I mean, I can definitely, inshallah.
I think the term is Islamo nerd.
No, I'm not one of those either. But I did speak to you about the master's program, inshallah, and I was planning on going back overseas. But if you have something in my backyard, I'm definitely,
No,
and
please,
especially if you're the one responsible for it.
You're welcome. Anyone who has that level of education already, they're welcome to join the master's program, which is a 3-year program, the last year being for a thesis, kind of writing program. That year we allow them to do their own research with some supervision from some of our wonderful scholars. We have some great scholars in our faculty, mashallah. Allah give them barakah and blessings.
Okay, so now just majority of people in general are probably like guys like me and Mahin. We're undergrads and we professionals. We don't have, further education like PhD or anything. Where would we start at Darul Qasim?
You would start at the Shaykh al-Hind level, or pre-Shaykh al-Hind if you don't want to do the whole 2-year course.
And what does that entail?
4 semesters. Your earlier courses, you just do Arabic.
Okay.
At your own pace.
Okay.
And you go at your own pace, and you can also benefit from the other programs which are community service based. Okay, I've separated what is community service from what is actually ilm and knowledge. Community service, what Muslim masajid mosques do, and other organizations do, that they help the community grow or raise funds for projects, and they offer 5 times salat on premises, and they have some counseling services, and they have some drives.
Do they have darses too, like a dars and this or a dars and that?
Yeah, so we initially started out with the community service program, where it will just be what we used to call the appetizer courses, durus, on this subject and this subject. Now, just to bring the crowd in so that they get a taste of, the great names that we have in our great history. MashaAllah, Ghazali and Ibn Qayyim and, other great scholars. What's his name? Ibn Atallah, the person who wrote the Hikam. Right, Ibn Hajar, and some of the courses, works that he did, Ibn Nawawi's courses, and so on. So that was just to introduce the scholars to the community, so that they would appreciate that we have a level of scholarship in classical Islam which is second to none. To infuse that pride in the Muslim mind in this country, that this country develops only because of its education and its educational institutions. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, Berkeley is perhaps the reason why America is still America.
Yeah, and I have some friends who are students at Darul Qasim, like in the bachelor's program, and the way they're full-time, working professionals, and they're not sleeping.
Yeah.
You're putting them through the ringer. I mean, this isn't like you're going to come in here and do some like cookie cutter, like, Sunday school and get qualified. You're going to work really hard.
You're raising specialists, basically.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, it's people from all professions come in and they see the value for a structured, organized lesson plan and, a methodology that appeals to their training. Yeah.
And I think a lot of our listeners need to understand why this is so valuable. Because one of the criticisms that a lot of Muslims or Muslim scholarships receive is that they're making rulings with uninformed rulings.
Yes,
Let's just say they're not experts in biomedicine and chemistry and things that require further study, right?
Yes.
So what you're doing is you're getting people who are already professionals, right?
Yes.
And you're putting a layer of Islam and Islamic education and integrating that into their personality, basically, and so that they can have these.
That's right. So Islamic knowledge has been infused into them so that they perform in their fields at a much higher level. with much more energy and confidence that they can actually contribute to mainstream American academics and, writing in journals and white papers and publications and books and all of that. So we do want to create the ability of Muslim professionals to take the lead in their various, professions, but through the academic lens, not just through the lens of earning money and making whatever life they have more comfortable. So there is an element of sacrifice that's needed there.
What professions, other than, right now the easy answer is like medical professions, but what other professions are there that would be conducive to higher learning, that would be able to go hand in hand?
Smooth transition.
Yeah, like things that are Muslim scholars are trying to perform ijtihad on and trying to derive.
Well, there are many. I mean, the sky's the limit. The medical profession being one, the legal profession being another, the business community, they really need some business ethics. What is the Islamic value of business in business? The teachers in our communities, so those who are in the education field, they could benefit from this kind of structure and organization. People who want to do curriculum development in order to write textbooks, they want to infuse the Islamic philosophy ideology into some of the sciences like social sciences or history or something like that. And you have obviously the stockbrokers, right? And everybody else in the world who's trying to make money from their various professions. You name it, you're going to see that whatever we have to offer is the monolithic foundation for Muslims in the U.S. And the word monolithic is intriguing because we must agree on the foundational values of Islam. Right. One of the points you just raised is that when it comes to representing Islam, say, in the media or on CNN or writing or giving a lecture somewhere, then unfortunately in the 80s and 90s, Allah give them a reward for whatever they did, but our uncles who represented Islam with the rabbi and the Christian theologian and the Catholic priest, they weren't on the same platform. Right? Because the uncle didn't know what the word theology meant. Never mind discuss it. Right? So that was a great disservice. And for that, we need to create and develop people who can think at that level, where we are on par with mainstream American systems and standards. That's what we're trying to do.
And recently, I haven't heard anybody, except for you, talk about bioethics in Islam, medical ethics in Islam. What drove you to actually get involved in these in these specific fields?
Well, it is basically a need. Obviously, need is the mother of invention, as you know, right? Yeah. So in bioethics, there was a need, and it is. I think we have to give credit where it belongs. There were some young medical professionals who wanted to know more about Muslim bioethics. First of all, the question was, do we have anything that is Muslim bioethics? And unfortunately, they didn't know Arabic, and if they did, they weren't able to read those books in Arabic, because we do have a lot of material in our madaris and in our institutions that give fatwa, but it's in Arabic and Urdu and Farsi. Okay, so we needed to transition that the way we transitioned the Latin and Greek works through the Abbasi Khilafah. We need to read it this way. What goes around comes around, I guess. Yeah. The monkey see, monkey do.
Right. It reminds me. So I know it's almost like a year ago. One of the earliest podcasts the Mad Mamluks did was Dr. Kamran Riaz.
Yeah.
Right.
He talks a lot about this. And my wife and I were listening to that in the car together, and she's a gynecologist, and she was like blown away. She's like, I didn't know like it just changed your framework. And I work, I'm an engineer, but I work in like steel manufacturing.
Yeah.
And so you can think about things like, cause when you're dealing with manufacturing, you're dealing with using natural resources.
Yes.
And then trying to find, you need the stuff, but then at the same time, where does it cross the limits?
Exactly.
Of profiteering excessively.
Yeah.
at the demise of like the climate, for example.
Yeah, but that's why we call business ethics. Okay? But more than business ethics, what we also focus or we want professionals to focus on is the ability to be creative and also very enterprising. That Islam does give you the ability to be creative and to generate more than what you think. We should be leading the industry. That's what I'm saying. Right, it's through many processes. One is vertical integration and all of that. So those models are out there for everybody to benefit from. And this is how we sustain the great civilization for over a millennium, all the way from the Atlantic to China. I mean, it's mind-boggling that people would assume that Muslims were kind of against progress, but yet they were able to sustain half of the world for 1,000 years. How did they do that? Unless you believe in that all Muslims were Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani and they performed karamat every day, which I think the majority of Muslims no longer do. There must have been somewhere where they had an economic system, they had a culture of rules and regulations and all of this. I think that needs to be reinvestigated, I think, by most people.
Certainly that's like kind of crazy. So Darul Qasim is setting a model, like the students at Darul Qasim are expected, like, not to just get by at work and then study at Darul Qasim, but also to be like execute at a high level,
much higher level.
Optimum performers.
They must do that to show that Muslims are still, mashallah, the people who give.
And is it safe to say? That Darul Qasim is heavily focused on investing on those individuals that are very high performers and highly educated to bring them into this realm of Islamic studies, incorporate that same discipline they have? So you're not really looking for numbers of people to enroll. No. You're looking for people to be high-level performers to enroll themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's our focus, but we don't deny anybody the opportunity to come and learn with us if they're not there yet, but we would help them develop to that level.
And what if somebody is, like, for instance, not Hanafi, or somebody's Maliki, or somebody, for instance, they believe that, they don't have to follow a madhab, for instance. Yeah. And if they do want to enroll, though, how do you cater to that?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it can be a challenge.
Yeah, we would tell them that by default, every Muslim in the country is Hanafi. And we would brainwash them to believe that without Abu Hanifa, you don't exist. But we have open door policy. And mashallah, if you're Maliki, that's great. We won't agree with you on anything, but if you're
Maheen's Maliki, by the way.
Yeah.
You're hurting his feelings, I think.
That's fine.
That's fine?
That's what we're here for. This is America.
Tell him you don't like Ohio State either. And tell him you're a Cubs fan.
I think he'd be more upset about that if you insult Ohio State.
Yeah, I can always change madhabs if it's convenient.
Yeah.
You can al-asa liman asa. If you like, you can utilize the staff in order to.
Yeah, but if you're from Ohio, I feel for you.
That's punishment enough.
Especially Cleveland.
I'm from Columbus, actually. But yeah, I also don't like Cleveland.
Well, that's close enough.
Like 2 hours or so.
I was in Cleveland yesterday, by the way, and I told them, we did a number on you guys forever. If there's hope for the Cubs, then there's hope for Amir.
Wow, yeah.
Yes.
No, but you mentioned the open door policy and stuff. But I've heard that there's a system in place to make sure people are still serious. The Arabic program I heard is it's not going to be like some Mickey Mouse club. It's going to be something where it's very it's rigorous, but also intentionally dry, as I've heard, to make sure you're really serious.
Yeah, it's by design, yes.
Yeah.
If you get bored and you don't like it, then our job is done. You don't belong here.
I think the philosophy of that was real cool. I know, there's books that, in the Hanafi madhab, for instance, is for instance, we talked about Hidayah and Talwiyah ala Tawdiyah. Those books are very coded and dry, and they're done that way intentionally, so no average person can pick up and just start trying to attempt to make fatwas.
Yeah.
Right? So that person, even that has to go through those books, has to be a very serious student, because it's not going to be like sitting in a session of discussing purification of the soul and warming the heart. It's not going to be like that. But you actually have to. It's going to make you realize, even though it's a dry subject, you're going to end up loving it.
Yeah, you're going to have to discover that you have a brain first.
Yes. No, but I don't know if and we can move on to the next thing. But I think sometimes people they don't realize that people who specialize in fiqh or in comparative fiqh, that and its own, if you have a drive for it, that itself is a type of tazkiyat an-nafs.
Oh, definitely, it is.
It is, right?
It gives you the boundaries within which you may live and perform and practice your deen.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and the way everything manifests into itself is beautiful.
Very necessary. Without that, you won't have a civilization. Civilization doesn't exist without a legal theory. Now, obviously, our president has proven it's wrong at the moment. But there you go. Things do happen.
Yeah, but I agree with the approach to make it like almost like have like a weed out program, because in the 2000s when a lot of us got interested in the deen, there was a glorification of studying Islam, right? And but a lot of it's just hype. It's just like it's like a fad.
Yeah.
And so like Darul Qasim is here like, okay, if you're here for the fad, like, all right, you ain't gonna last too long.
Yeah. We don't serve Pepsi.
Serve Pepsi.
Yeah. You bring your own Zamzam with you.
MashaAllah. And I know we're running out of time. I think it's almost 4:00 now. Just one quick thing is for our listeners, we want them to kind of understand that no matter how high of a level a human achieves in Islamic academics, they always have this human side to him and the human side to them, and they may watch sports once in a while, right? And they may find it okay, right? I understand that you're somewhat of a Cubs fan. Are you a pretty hardcore Cubs fan? I don't know.
Well, it's in the genes, You're from India, you're from England, then bat and ball makes a lot of sense to you.
Cricket,
So the cricket and baseball, they kind of converge together somewhere, at least in the tools and the names.
What about real football? Not the football of the United States, but the real football. Are you into real football?
The real football, yes. That's more of a childhood passion. So,
do you have a favorite Premier League team?
Yeah, we do, but I can't say that on the air.
Why not?
No.
Have they been relegated?
Well, no. One thing about football is, meaning in America we call it soccer, is you have hooligans, and if they find out that you like another team, they may.
I bet Shaykh Amin's a fan of like Millwall. They had like the worst hooligans around.
No. I chose them because they have a component of jihad in their name. Their nickname is called the Gunners.
Arsenal. Okay, I see. Nice.
Arsenal happens to be an Arabic word by the name.
Does it really?
Yeah, it's from Dar al-Sinar. Yeah, where they used to make the weapons.
Really?
Hence the word arsenal. So it's an Arabic word which, makes sense that some Muslim would actually support the team.
Did you know there was a town in Ireland? They back in the 1700s or 18th century, they had a potato famine and they were starving, and the Ottoman Empire sent them a great generous amount of food. And to make a long story short, they put the star and crescent on their seal. So if anyone's familiar with soccer, you'll see club crests and whatnot that have crosses and whatnot. These guys have a star and crescent on there in honor of what the Ottomans did for them.
Good.
I don't know.
That's
and the reason why I bring that up to light is that even though it's a very rigorous program and there's very high expectations for the program, but you have somebody who's the president and the founder of Darul Qasim. And obviously, in the introduction, we didn't do justice. I mean, we'd have to go on and have a long list to do justice to your introduction.
You should come and visit us, and then you can do justice there.
Okay, no, for sure.
As being a judge, we'll do justice for you.
But what I'm saying is that the reason why I mentioned that is because the individual that's the president and the founder, he understands what the average person does and how they watch sports and how they're entertained, and you bring that into obviously the curriculum, because I've seen you do that before. That you're very real with the crowd. You're at the same level as them. As sometimes we see, and may Allah reward all of us for all of our efforts, but sometimes you fall into the trap of talking about something that people don't understand what you're talking about, and you can't do that, right?
Well, the beauty of understanding the Quran is that it allows you to relate to the language of people. Okay. And that's what we do when we train, that we're supposed to speak at the level of the people. And unfortunately, or fortunately, the people, they understand sports analogies very easily.
Yeah, they do. So, they do.
Like losers and
me.
losers.
No doubt. Well, all right, Shaykh Amin, Jazakallah khair for coming
That's
through.
good.
And I wish we would have you for 2 hours, but
Yeah,
it's
maybe
yeah.
some other time. But I'll take the offer. We're gonna I'm gonna visit you guys. Well,
Inshallah.
you still have a tafsir class going on?
Sunday mornings, 11 a.m. Central Time is live webcast for anyone else.
Okay.
Who wants to just go to the website? It'll be free.
Okay.
You just
Darul Qasim website?
DarulQasim.org is the
Dot-
website.
We're gonna have it
Yeah.
in the show notes, and if
Yeah.
anyone's interested in enrolling, when's the next, for example, the Shaykh al-Hind program kick off?
Well, we go by the academic year, so the next one will be in fall this year, inshallah. Yeah.
Okay, and how does one, and the information for applying everything is on the
You
website?
just go online and you register, and everything else is kind of very straightforward.
Okay, and if someone has, let's say someone like has taken a few levels of Arabic,
Yeah.
they would place it into the appropriate level.
You will be placed where you belong, yes,
Right,
inshallah.
sure.
Hopefully. Some do fall through the cracks.
They get relegated.
They'll get relegated. All right, on that note, we will wrap it up. For our special guest, Shaykh Amin Kholwadia, and my co-hosts, Shaykh Amir Saeed and Sim. This is Mahin for the Mad Mamluks. And before I forget, forgot a normal plug. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. We are on iTunes, so give us a 5-star rating if you haven't already. We'll make sure the Sheikh does the same as well before he leaves. I don't know if he's at an iPhone or not.
Inshallah.
And for you Android folks still living in the Stone Age, we're on Stitcher Radio. So for the Mad Mamluks, we are signing off. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakumullah.